great show for you today, folks. It's going to be a great show. But before I get started, I want to tell Stu is in the house on the boards. How are you doing this morning or this afternoon, Stu?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great, Egberto. Thank you.
Well, I noticed that we have somebody else in the studio. Let's give a good recognition to our person out there in the studio. How are you doing today? Your name? I didn't even get a chance to introduce myself. But anyway, we are going to have a great show.
Hi, it's Di.
Di is in the house. She's training on the board and helping with the phones.
Hey, well, look, I appreciate you being here in the studio with us, all right?
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks, we are going to have a great show for you today. The title of the show is Corporations, Irrespective of Party, Prosecutions for Malfeasance is Down, and Unionization is down. We're going to continue with that, but before I get started, I want to ask all you guys to give us a call at 713-526-5738. Hit extension 2 to come on air right away. Again, the number is 713-526-5738. Before I get started, I always like to tell you guys to remember this is a community radio station, and it is funded and supported by you. Not only is it funded and supported by you, that offers you the ability to have a vote in this station. That gives you the ability to know that everything that we tell you is the unadulterated truth, not going through the lens, not going through the prisms of a corporation, a prism of those who would mislead you for a profit. Because who owns KPFT 90.1 FM? You do. You own the words that come over here because guess what? You support it. So please don't forget to go to kpft.org, kpft.org, hit that donate button and support the program. I promise you, we work hard to bring you substantive information. We work hard to bring you music that you normally won't hear on commercial radio. We work hard to bring you news programs, fact-based opinions, etc., etc., etc. So now that I've taken that minute to ask you to make sure to please, we ask you so kindly to support our program on kpft.org. Remember to select Politics Done Right as a program you are supporting. May Wood is on the internet. He's the first person in the chat, but we'd like to have some of you on the phone as well. 713-526-5738. Hit option 2. Please don't wait till the end of the show. Let's get engaged early so that we can have substantive conversation, substantive discourse. Anyway, repeating again, the title of the show, Corporations Win Irrespective of Party. Prosecutions for Malfeasance down, Unionization down. What does it say? I repeat, what does it say? When irrespective of which party is in power, that corporations increases their power. Malfeasance, unionization, and profits. Is there an answer? Yes. Anyhow, starting. Remember the joy those who were not blinded by the fallacies of healthcare felt when Obamacare passed? Even the people in Ruby Red's Kentucky were happy with Obamacare by a different name. They called it Connect. But guess who else loved it? Health insurance stocks went through the roof. Why would that be? Why would that be? Well, I'm going to continue with Ray first, and then we'll continue with the essay. Ray, come on in to the program. How are you doing today, sir?
Happy Friday, Egberto.
Happy Friday, Ray.
Belated MLK Day to you. I did get a chance to listen in, but I was working, so you know how that is.
No problem, my man. I'm just happy that you're listening, and, I love to hear from you as well. Talk to me.
Yeah, I want to kind of take you, I guess, into the weeds again today.
Okay.
And my topic that I want to talk about is pedophiles aren't getting the attention they deserve.
Okay.
And I really want your listeners out there to understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, my reason for going here is because you mention all the time a lot of the issues happening in our society affect those at the bottom most.
Yes.
And no one gets more guff than anybody accused of a sex crime.
Yes.
However, you have three prominent sex criminals that I call that are convicted and unconvicted, and yet because they're high profile, they were either in the financial sector or in our political sector. They are immune from any kind of consequences, which is why I say they don't get the attention they deserve. Those three individuals I'm naming are actually Florida men. And if you know anything about Florida, they have some of the toughest sex offender laws in the country.
Yes.
And if these men were actually held accountable for their actions, they would not be able to live in Florida. Those three men are Jeffrey Epstein. You know his story.
Oh, yes,
it's well
I do
documented.
know. Yes.
Matt Gaetz,
Yes.
who has been documented for
Sex trafficking. Mm-hmm.
And is also good pals with our beloved senator, Mr. Ted Raphael Cruz. I call him Raphael right now. He don't deserve to be Ted.
Exactly.
And last but not least, Mr. I grab women by the you-know-what,
Yes.
Donald J. Trump.
The former president
All
of the
these
United
men-
States.
Former president of the United States. All three of these men have been able to navigate through life with no consequences for their alleged sex crimes. And you understand, the allegation alone would cripple a working class person.
Yes.
But these men, because they're in a high place of power, don't see any consequences.
And let me tell you, Ray, and that is where we come in as a, and in fact, I'm going to talk about some of that when I'm done with the essay, in that we have to take responsibility for taking responsibility for these things. In other words, we can't just, you turn on a radio show a lot of times, Ray, and, we complain, and then we throw our hands up in the air and nothing changes, right? What I am hoping to do with what we do, not only at KPFT with Politics Done Right, but I do the KPFT, or I do the Politics thing Done Right things all over the internet. I also write a whole lot of blogs and books, etc. My thing is, I want us to understand that we already have the power to change those things. Just like you're talking about it now, the mere fact you're listening and eventually you're going to vote appropriately. But we have to keep people's eyes, like you just did, focused on the ball. In other words, yes, we have to. Right now, if you listen to anybody talking about Donald Trump running for president again, they won't make his sex crimes or alleged sex crimes a major portion of his narrative. If that were it, go ahead.
Let me rebut. But it'll cripple even a progressive. Look at what it did to Al Franken.
Yes.
He had to step. He didn't have to, but he volunteered to step down because the shame of that label.
Okay.
But,
I agree. I think you may have cut me a little bit too early, because I'm not disagreeing with you at all. What I'm saying is, the narrative on Donald Trump right now is like I said, when we are here on the radio and when we are telling people what we think folks should do to make a change, if you listen to the mainstream media narrative, very little is touched about all the allegations on these guys. These guys are treated just like you would be treated being a non-offender when they are offenders. These guys are given airtime. These guys are given respect. These guys are given all of these things, even as they have all these allegations against them. But we, the people now, if we, independent media, etc., take the responsibility not to let that fall through the crack, like you just did by pointing out these three prominent guys, that two of them who just got reelected, or one that two got reelected, by pointing that out. I mean, think about if these things were more prevalent.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be said, and I know you know, but I'm saying it for the listeners out there, because they tend to forget that, these things, they were brought up in the media maybe for a week or two, and then they get forgotten.
That's the point that I'm making. In other words, you just changed that narrative, didn't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And now The thousands of people that are out there listening to the radio, when they think Donald Trump later on this afternoon, they are going to be remembering about Holden by the you know what. When they think about Gates, when Gates are on Gates is on all these committees that he just got placed on, they're going to be thinking they have that sex trafficker on a committee. And when he starts talking to the committee, those folks who have listened to what you brought onto this program, that's going to be triggering in their minds as well. And that's the importance of our kind of media.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Cruz, he can't speak because he wanted to grill Ketanji Brown about, her opinion, her legal opinion on sex offenders. But he's palling around with a known
sex
alleged
offender. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Anything else you want to say, Brother Ray?
Well, I'm a proud owner of both audiobooks for How to Make America Utopia and How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Friends. And I actually would love to see you in a webinar. I actually sent you an email about that.
Yeah, I haven't responded yet, but I just saw it while I was going through my email here at the studio. But yes, thank you so kindly for getting those two books. I mean, I really do appreciate that. Thank you so kindly.
Yes, sir. Keep up the good work. You have a great, wonderful weekend.
You too, sir. All right. Anyway, folks, that was Ray, and Ray brought up a very important point that we have to keep in the space, in the narrative. Anyhow, folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Please remember to hit option 2 so that you'll get on the air right away. Option 1 is if you want to contribute. Option 2 is to get on the air right away and speak with me. 713-526-5738. Let's see. I don't know if it's my location or just my lousy Wi-Fi, but getting lots of lag today. Sorry about that on the air on Maywood. You can also listen at kpft.org as well, or politicsandright.tv. Anyhow, remember the joy, back to the essay, remember the joy, those who were not blinded by the fallacies of healthcare felt when Obamacare passed. Even the people in Ruby Red, Kentucky were happy with Obamacare by a different name. In Kentucky, it was called Connect. I remember on TV they would say, do you want Obamacare? People said, no, that's socialism. And then they said, but do you like Connect? And they said, I love Connect. Connect gives me good health care. Well, Connect was a name in Kentucky given to Obamacare. So they loved Connect, but they hated Obamacare. That is what our media, that is what our politicians did then. But guess who else loved it? The health insurance stocks went through the roof. The health insurance companies loved Obamacare. They loved the Affordable Care Act, which is the same. They loved Connect, which is the same. Why would that be? Well, corporations via their nonprofit misinformed and paid politicians created enough chaos to scare politicians into making the Affordable Care Act somewhat patient-friendly, but mostly corporation-friendliest. You get it? They made it patient-friendly, but corporation-friendliest. So therefore, corporations knew, we got Obamacare now. We didn't really want it because there's going to be increased taxes and whatever. But guess what? We're going to make all that money back and more. Let's talk about it, folks, because it's not this is a prelim to the subject. It's important. Yes, you get a free colonoscopy with Obamacare, but if they find something wrong, the colonoscopy is no longer coded as screening. In other words, millions that would not have had a colonoscopy get one. It may or may not save their lives if cancer is found, but to many, it drains their financial resources. Understand what that means. Screening becomes a marketing tool, subsidized government advertising to increase business for screening centers, hospitals, and the entire private healthcare industrial complex. And this type of scenario occurs over and over and over for Obamacare and for many other things. I think I think I need you to understand what I just said there. Everybody talks about screening. Obamacare increased the level of screening on everybody. You can go get yourself screened now. Supposedly, if you screen, you can find diseases early and where it's easier to treat, etc. But if in the screening process something is found, that is no longer screening, that's diagnostic. And diagnostic is not covered by the freeness, the free coverage, right? It's not. It's not covered. It's now into the other domain. If you have insurance who covers it, you may be paying your 80/20 at that point. It's not free anymore. So in effect, what Obamacare did for insurance companies is it was a marketing tool for them to bring in a lot of people for screening, because if you bring a lot of people for screening, you're going to find a lot of diseases. And if you find a lot of diseases, you make a lot of money, because in America, diseases means money for the health care industrial complex. I so wish folks understood. Don't get me wrong, Obamacare is good for all of us. But remember the way it was written for the corporations to make even more. So you get a little bit more coverage. You may go to the doctor when you otherwise would not, and that may cost you your house or something that otherwise would not if you just drop dead. But folks, remember, it was a marketing tool for the healthcare industrial complex. Let's go ahead and bring on Caston into the field. Caston, come on in. You are hot right now. Come on in, Caston.
My question is this.
Yes.
A little bit on racial disparity, going all the way back to 1968.
Yes, sir.
I was in a special reconnaissance platoon, and I had a machine gunner that was black, and our lives depended on each other. And as the year went on with all the racial strife back here in the United States, he started hanging around with all the, I should say, the blacks. They were having all this against the white people in Vietnam. So I went down there one day. I called him up in front of all these other blacks. I told him to put his hand out, and I took out my knife real quick, and I cut the palm of his hand, and I cut mine. And I said, "Do you see any difference in the color of the blood?" He said, "No." I said, "Understand something." I said, "If it gets bad and you get hit," I said, "I'm coming for you. If it takes my life, so be it, but I'm coming for you." And I expect the same from you. Up to the present day now, with Black Lives Matter and everything else going on, why is it that none of the high-profile black Americans, LeBron, Sheila Jackson-Lee, or anybody else steps up and says, "Hey, you're bringing our race down. This is not right. You need to change your attitudes." But none of them speak up. None of them says anything. And then as a white person, if I brought anything like this up, then right away I'm condemned as a racist.
Okay, let me ask you a question, because and by the way, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing up a subject that many would fear bringing up, especially to a black host. So you got my kudos right there, first of all. Now, secondly, I don't know if I quite understood the problem. What is this that you want Sheila and other prominent black people to do?
What I'm saying is, you read every day about carjacking, sir. You read about people being accosted, everything on TV. And the majority of it is black Americans. That's all we see on TV.
Right.
And then my question is why don't the high-profile black Americans that are in sports, baseball, football, Sheila Jackson-Lee, anybody else, why don't they speak up on TV and say, "You're disparaging our race. This is not right. You need to change your attitudes," but you don't hear a word out of them.
I am so happy you brought that up. And you brought up a lot of issues, Caston. Let me first attempt with the first thing that with one of the last things that you said. You said every time you look in TV and you see these crimes being committed, what do you see? Black folks committing those crimes, correct?
Absolutely, and
All right.
and I feel to my
Now, let me stop you right there, because
Okay.
I think I made you say a whole lot, which I'm happy that you did, and because you're going to help me point out some very important points right here. The reason when you go, if you go to, have you ever been to a courthouse? And I'm not talking about for a traffic ticket or anything like that, but a criminal courthouse.
Absolutely, I was a police officer for 18 years.
Okay, great. So let me point something out. It is a fallacy. Black people as a percentage commit more crime when not weighted for for economics events. In other words, black folk, Latinos, and others, when you look at it, when you pass it through a socioeconomic prism, you find that if you go to Appalachia, where it's predominantly white, the level of crime, and I did all this research, that's why I'm glad you brought this up, because a lot of people think exactly like what you're saying as well. But I think what we ought to do as a society, I love everybody, I don't care who the hell you are, and I'm glad for the story you gave about you and the guy in the foxhole with you, because that is where we need to be as a country. You're absolutely right. But here's the deal, brother. What happens is what our society has done is it creates narratives. And that narrative about the evil black man out there to get you it's such a narrative that is presented on screen for Houstonians. Are you here in Houston?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, it's for Houstonians to see on TV. Every bad crime that you see on TV, mostly it's going to be a Latino or a black person that you see on TV. But if you effectively look at all the crime that has occurred in the city on that day, you would see that that is not the majority of the crime that has occurred. But that is what you will see on TV. You're absolutely right. Now, if you are looking at a society, if white Houston or white America goes on to TV, and every time they see a crime, they see a black person or a person of color, they are going to make that equation that says, black people, crime. Latino people, crime. That's what they're going to see. And I can't blame them for seeing that, right? And that's why I take the stance that I take with my program. My program isn't to say, here is this white guy who just called me on the phone and he said that Sheila Jackson Lee should talk to black people and tell them to stop being criminals. First of all, that's the people that you see on TV are such a small percentage of the black population that for Sheila to have to equate the black pop by Sheila, if Sheila were to get up and say black people stop acting that way, she would be acknowledging that those criminals that you are seeing on TV are somehow representative of the black population at large. My wife goes to a predominantly black church. My daughter went to a predominantly white school. All right? Guess what? And she also goes, my daughter also goes to a predominantly black church. Guess what she has noticed among these different groups of people that that she's very close to, her white friends in school and her black friends in church. The behavior, etc., are pretty darn similar. What we have.
Well, if I
go ahead, come on.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Sure.
The point you made just a couple of moments ago
Yes.
about black Americans being portrayed on TV and the crime, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have many black friends.
Yes.
Okay. That's not, in no way. I mean, I love them dearly. They're brothers to me.
Right.
But what I'm saying is when you see this portrayed in the media on TV all the time
Mm-hmm.
over a large white populace and they see that these young blacks with the hoodies on and everything else are committing the crime, then you can't help but understand that a lot of white people that don't sit down and rationalize it, as you just stated, that they say, well, overall, this is the way
They
the
are.
13% of the black population is.
Yes.
And by God, this is bad. We
Caston,
don't want to deal with this.
So let me talk
And
to you,
that's why
Caston. Caston, that is where you come in, Caston. You're a smart dude, aren't you? You're a smart dude. And, the society is only going to change when all of us make the change, or either we make the change or we also force the change with our persuasive powers. Because you understood exactly what I said about if you listen to my programs all over that where I give, I am not the black guy that comes out and just start attacking white folks who seem to say racist things or seem to say certain things that are unkind. You don't see me doing that. What I try to do is I try to see things through the eyes of the person that I'm talking to. And the reason I try to do that is most people I've realized in society are good people. And they're good people with racist feelings. They're good people with racist ideas. And some folks are going to slap me for saying that. But here's what I mean. People didn't become that way out of just thin air. We have an entire society whose job it is to create this chaos. Because believe it or not, and I'm going to go a little bit in the weeds here, but I'm going to ask you to stick with me. Our economic system depends on racism. And I don't mean the way you may think. It depends on white guys like you, right? And white folk looking at Latinos and looking at black folk and be concerned about what they're doing, because the way the economic system works, it pilfers everybody. It pilfers you as a white guy. It pilfers me as a black guy, a black Latino, black Caribbean dude. It pilfers everybody. But the only way they can continue doing that is to create these animals. So when you watch TV, crime look a certain way, but it doesn't tell you the whole story. There's
Well,
Go ahead.
Let me bring you up to date on one thing. I rode back on the Miami Police Force,
Yes, sir.
and once the area I rode was predominantly black, Haitian, Puerto Rican.
Yes.
One side was called the pit, the other side was called the swamp. And the pit was where all the Puerto Ricans and Haitians lived, and the swamp where all low-income blacks lived. And I was raised never to be prejudiced by my family, never have been in my life. But as a white police officer riding an all-black area and dealing with the same thing day in and day out, you cannot help but getting somewhat prejudiced.
Yes.
Because I used to see black guys shining their cars, getting them just absolutely beautiful, and they'd they'd be dressed to the nines with the shirt and the coat and all that, and getting in their Cadillac. And then I would see the poor black mother with 3 little kids trotting along behind her with a shopping cart full of clothes, going to the laundromat.
Right.
And I would go, what is wrong with this picture? And the same thing, and like I say, going all the way back to that time, 71, 72, and it carries all the way over to right now. There's no father structure. There's no guidance. There's no value. There's no common sense.
All right, let me push back a bit there. And the reason I want to tell, remember I spoke earlier about a lot of these issues being socio-economic, right? And there's
Correct.
a genesis for all of this. You already gave me the impression that you are acknowledge that pigmentation for all practical purposes, skin deep. I have a whole book I wrote about this particular issue, but I'm not going to go there now. But everything that you just said right there about the black folks that you've seen in the swamp, or I guess the part that you look in, right? I can ride to a certain part of America with mostly white people. I could tell you a story about my daughter in Ohio, in the Ohio River Valley. And that is the same behavior you get. Socioeconomic behavior is a thing. But what happens is while it is highlighted on TV or when you were a cop because you were in Miami and not in Timbuktu, Ohio, that is what you saw. But nobody, not often would folks speak the way you just spoke about black folks, about the white areas in Appalachia. So what I'm trying to get to you, right, is not that, I mean, the picture is bad that you just showed. The guy shining his car, taking care of himself, and not of the mother with 3 kids who is he impregnated. But I'm saying that's not a racial thing. You saw it in a black neighborhood, but it's not a racial thing because it's something you will also see in. And by the way, I appreciate the conversation and appreciate the civility of the conversation.
I totally agree with you.
Right.
But, I was just trying to state the point
Yes.
that being a white officer in an all-black area
Right.
and seeing the same thing
Right.
every day while I'm patrolling, even though I was raised without any prejudice whatsoever,
It got you
does
prejudiced,
creep
yeah.
into your mind.
And let me tell you what I expect of you as a police officer, though, sir. Right? And this is where training is supposed to come in, because believe it or not, I like I said, I see things through the eyes of others. And if you're a white officer in a black neighborhood having to address black persons doing bad things and also maybe being racial towards you because of their own experiences, I can see how the animosity builds. I can see that through your eyes. What I'm saying, however, is that our training with you as a professional, you cannot affect your heart when certain things are happening, but as a professional, your people, your bosses, your training should still keep a particular modus operandi. And that's what when I march with Black Lives Matter, and I have marched with Black Lives Matter before, because I have seen cops do the things that cops do to people who have, the sentiment that you just gave, sir, actually tells me that under a particular condition, you could have behaved that way. Am I right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But,
Okay, so let me stop you there.
same-
Let me stop you there, because that's what I'm saying. We're all humans, right? And we have these behavior types. Now, that said, the reason I march with these guys, I'm saying we have to change the modus operandi. And you as a
Yeah.
professional, you are the professional. You are the professional, right? We have to instill in your training. When you remember when you're in the military, you had to learn muscle memory. Certain bullets start flying, you had to learn how to react before your mind gets involved. What happens with a lot of cops is their muscle memory has not been trained that correct, or have not been trained correctly. Yes, they're calling you names, they're disrespecting you, they're doing all these things, but what is your name? A peace officer.
Well, if I can say on that subject matter
Yes.
that you just brought up as far as training,
Yes.
let's go back to George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 3 officers, I have to admit, I have somewhat empathy for them. Because what I'm saying is these were newbies on the force.
Yeah.
And when you're a newbie on the force, you're on probation. And I can't remember the main guy that was holding George Floyd down.
Yeah.
But he was the senior officer. So this is just like being in the military, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a PFC, and I see my captain doing something.
Right.
I'm going to speak up against my captain. No, I'm going
you
to be
won't.
cleaning out I'm going to be cleaning out grease
I get
traps
it.
for the next 3 years. And so these young officers, they're seeing this, and in their mind, they're going, yes, this is wrong. This should not be. Scared to death to speak up because this guy would write on an efficiency report. And very simply, these guys are thinking about their family, support for their family, and they get
Right.
fired.
Right. Well, look, let me tell you, Preston. First of all, keep listening to my show. Keep calling in. And what I like about the conversation is we can have a frank conversation. And I think if we start doing more of this, looking through other people's eyes, and you yourself, I want you looking through the eyes of those people that you became prejudiced against, and ask what the genesis is of how they are. None of this happened in a vacuum. People didn't get the way they were in a vacuum. And if more of us were preaching this narrative, this proper narrative, that that the bad guy, whether white, black, or blue, or whomever, didn't get that way out of the blue. And those are the things that I like to figure out. We can either want to make a positive change in society or just keep fighting among folks. And I choose to make a positive change.
Well, I'll tell you real quickly, and then we'll let it go. As far as the George Floyd thing and the other young officers, you have to admit yourself, some of us have a weak backbone, some of us have a strong one. I've got a very strong one. I say it like it is.
Yeah.
And if I was one of those officers, I would have gone over there and I would have pulled him off Floyd in a heartbeat, whether it cost me my
I think,
job
look,
or not.
Caston, I think you're a good person. I honestly think you called in and we could have this conversation, and I think you're a good person. Keep calling, keep listening, but I do think that there are some streaks that I heard in there are some stereotypes I heard in the words that you say, but we tackle that some other time. But I really do appreciate your call, though, sir.
All right, my friend. Have a good one.
You have a great one now. All right, let's go to Moses. Come on in, Moses.
Good. What is it? Buenos tardes or buenos noches?
Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo estás, Moisés? And your name, Moses, is
Bien,
Moisés.
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Muy bien, estoy muy bien.
¿Vous êtes bien?
You did very well, sir. You did very well. How you doing, my friend?
All right. Now, my topic is, I don't know if you heard it, but when I heard it, as a retired teacher, it just blew off my mind.
Yes.
I heard that in Florida, they're about to erase the Black History Studies.
Oh, my God. Don't tell me about it. I've read about it. Go ahead.
And they're going to replace it with European history.
Let me tell you what happened. Let me just tell you in effect what happens. And you may want to turn down the radio a bit that you have on.
Okay, hold on a minute.
Okay,
Let me
so
turn up the radio.
I will, and as I said, this, as I'm going to start telling the folks as it is right now. In Florida, the great governor of Florida is trying to redo how things work. And it seems like our network has gone down again. Yeah, so anyhow, but can you hear me? Yeah. So,
yes, I can hear you clearly.
all right, so here's what happens. What he did is he went ahead and said, we are no longer, there's a nonprofit organization that wants to teach or put a Black history curriculum, and I don't quite remember what the format of the history was, but he said that Black history has the way they were going to teach Black history has no value. The only things that they should be teaching based on Florida law is European history, Japanese history, etc.
Oh my heavens!
Okay, and again, this is to reach the deepest part of his party, who have no desire for any kind of racial harmony. And I mean, he didn't only talk about that. He also wants to teach that the slave trade didn't really occur. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of. If you look at DeSantis' history when he was a teacher and when he did a whole lot more, he was always, I don't like to just call people racist, but that's in effect what he was. He was when he taught. He is as a governor. And the reason he is that way, I can't quite understand why it is. Now,
the question I'm asking,
yes,
as a teacher, with
yes,
the heart of a teacher,
yes,
if you have studied in education,
yes,
educational philosophy, if you've gone through the annals of education, Piaget, Jerome Bruner, and all of our education prelates, if you have studied education thoroughly and understand how people learn, what it takes to bring a generation through with education, that it has to encompass every subject.
yes,
so
it
you
does.
can get a citizenry that is knowledgeable,
Yes,
strong, and can face any contingency. If you understand that is your profession as a teacher, who let that dog through into education? To come up through education to get to a point where he's now the governor and can do better for educators and education and for the learning of children, who let that dog into education? And then to find himself as a governor now, oh my heavens, it is a pain in the heart of a teacher.
You're absolutely right. Mr. Teacher, I want to ask you to hold 1 second. I want to just say this. I want to salute Diggs, BTW7, John Smith, Julie Henderson. You guys keep talking and having that great conversation on the chat. And now back to you, Moises. I want to say this.
Uh-huh.
I want to first tell my Florida brothers and sisters, you have a terrible governor who, within the school system, is creating a authoritarian form of teaching, which will make sure that those who solely get their education in those schools are ill-informed, and an ill-informed student will perform just that way on the world stage as well. But the good thing about it is this: I'm a free enterpriser, Moises. Okay, I love free enterprise, right? And the school is just one place of learning, right? So we know now that in that one place of learning, we have a lot of misinformation. What that does is it creates the avenue for great people like you, Moises, to have all these external learning centers. And I'm not even talking about something that pays a lot or whatever. You would get grants from all over to have people come to symposiums and little things that you can do. We don't have to live under the purview of terrible governors, even if we live in a red state. There are options. It gives us an opportunity to go. Let me tell you what I would do if I were politicians from from a different party in Florida. I would use what Mr. Governor of Florida is doing to grow my base. And how do we do that? I would get nonprofit dollars to go into community after community and give classes after classes. After we've already made it known that this guy is miseducating your kids, we will get a chance to educate them. And in educating those kids in particular subjects free of charge and having their families in, who do you think those families' loyalties become thereafter?
But here's the problem with my experience in teaching and with the powers that be in teaching. When you try to institute common sense, the situation is such that the parents are affected, the students are affected, the whole state is affected.
Yes.
And this man is sitting there and has the power to put stumbling blocks in your way. I know.
Right.
He has the power to put stumbling blocks in your way. So the best thing to do, if you can get the people together, is to call a vote of no confidence.
The thing about it is you're not going to get that in. We still have a very, I hate to use the word polarized, but we have a very polarized society right now, and one of the polls are not based on fact-based information. Okay, so it's hard to get through. But what we have the power to do is what we can do for ourselves. And
let me say this. But let me say the last thing.
Sure, go ahead.
Because you have other callers.
Yes.
What I am looking at now, I am so, I'm a U.S. citizen now, and I loved America. I taught for 22 years.
Yes. Thank you very much, by the way. I have, before you finish, I want all teachers to know this. I think the most loyal, the most important profession, bar none, is teaching, and I revere teachers. Back in Panama, teachers were treated like royalty because we understand that is what carries society forward. Continue, Moises.
Yeah, I'll say this quickly. And what I see, over the years, we, the older teachers, we saw this coming. We warned against it when they began inclusion and all these little, these little devices.
Right.
And especially in the poor black communities. Like you were saying to this gentleman a while ago, it is not their fault. It is not their fault. Everything is lined up against them. And we, the teachers, would try to fight for our students. They come after you with everything they have going. But I am so sorry for America that when an American student faces a foreign student, and the foreign student, I remember I asked my students one time, who is the Secretary of State for the United States? And everybody looked at me and said, who? And I said, my. I trembled. And you ask them, I even went asked one, who's Jesse Jackson? Who? Oh, my heaven. When we begin to lose knowledge and understanding and wisdom among our students, the next generation going forth, we have not given them anything to stand up in the face of the enemy. We have given them nothing.
Let me tell you,
And that's all I will say.
Moises, thank you so kindly for calling in. You just mentioned Secretary of State, and I'm like, God, it just slipped me. No, but I knew who it was. But here's the thing. Like I said, first of all, I agree with you, but I also think that we need to move from the position of impotence and always try to turn lemons into lemonade. And in as much as the governor of Florida, DeSantis, is doing all these bad things, I think these bad things are an opportunity for us to engage the community otherwise. And I think one of the problems we have in America, and not only in America but elsewhere, is we rarely think outside of the box. And we need to start thinking outside of the box to mitigate the bad things that are happening by bad people. And that's my goal. And that's one of my goals with these types of programs as well. Look, we can turn those lemons into lemonade.
I think you are right. It is usually necessity is the mother of invention.
There you go.
And I think
you are a
this
teacher.
is where we are.
You are an
This is where we
educator.
are now.
You are an educator. Thank you so kindly for calling, Moises.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
folks, give us a call, 713-526-5738. In case I don't get through with the essay today, please remember that you can always go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, and you can find all the essays for every show that I've done. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Corporations via their nonprofit misinformed, and I'm continuing with the story of the day until I get another call, 713-526-5738. Hit option 2 and you will be on air. I would love to hear from you. All right. Corporations via their nonprofit misinformed and paid politicians created enough chaos to scare politicians into making the Affordable Care Act somewhat patient-friendly and mostly corporation-friendliest. Yes, you get free colonoscopy, but remember what I said earlier. If it finds something else, it can cost you. All right, continuing. Every time a law purportedly helps the masses, look under the hood. Corporations are going to get their pound of flesh extracted by their bought politicians first. Remember our previous topic where we discussed stakeholders? The capital class gets the most and we get the crumbs. Stakeholder theory is a view of capitalism that stresses the interconnected relationships between business, their customers, suppliers, employees, investors, communities, and others who have a stake in the organization. It is clear based on the declining economic state that the economic state in the organization. It is clear based on the declining economic state and powerlessness of the employee and the customer that the theory does not treat stakeholders evenly. Capitalism in its name is probative. The stakeholders who own and control the capital continue to be the lord of the consumers, and employees remain the serfs. Two stories come to mind. Few will initially see their interrelation, but they must. The first is that under this purported union-loving Democratic president and administration, unionization is at its lowest point. The second is that under President Joe Biden, corporate prosecutions have hit a record low. The Common Dreams article, Low Union Numbers Amid Organizing Wave Sparks Calls for U.S. Labor Law Fixes, should give everyone pause. It says the following. Labor advocates renewed calls for boosting U.S. worker rights and protections on Thursday as federal data revealed that despite union membership rising by 273,000 from 2021 to 2022, a jump in non-union jobs meant the unionization rate fell from 10.3% to a record low of 10.1%. In 1983, the first year where comparable union data are available, the union membership rate was 20.1%, and there were 17.7 million union workers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics noted in a statement announcing the new figures, the number of workers who held a job covered by a union contract included those who report no union affiliation, rose by 200,000 to 16 million last year, but the percentage of employees represented dropped from 11.6% to 11.3%, according to the BLS, that's the Bureau of Labor and Service. All right. The Bureau found that those 7.1 million public sector employees belong to unions in 2022, similar to the 7.2 million private sector workers. The union membership rate was 33% for the public sector, compared with 6% for the private sector. Think about that, 6%. Responding to the BLS release, the AFL-CIO Federation of Unions, representing 12.5 million workers, asserted these statistics highlight the need for protecting the right to organize, the PRO Act, and the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, which will hold union-busting companies and organizations accountable and give workers the negotiation power they deserve. Specifically, pointing to the record low unionization rate last year, Nina Turner, a former Democratic congressional candidate and senior fellow at the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy, said that this is a move in the wrong direction. Noting the same statistics, Democrats said the U.S. House Committee on Education and the Workforce tweeted, "Unfortunately, this is not a surprise, even though unions are extremely popular among workers. This is a direct result of employers using illegal union-busting tactics and Republicans turning their backs on working people." Remember I said I'll tie the two together. At the same time, another article, analysis shows corporate prosecutions hit a low of 20 in 2022 under Biden. So here we go. We have unionization going down many times because of illegal actions by corporations, and at the same time, we're having less corporations being convicted, less corporations being scrutinized. So here we go. It says, despite the Biden administration pledge to crack down on corporate crime, a new analysis of Justice Department data shows that business prosecution fell to a record low in fiscal year 2022, even as there appeared to be no shortage of wrongdoing, from healthcare fraud to large-scale price gouging. The Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse, a nonprofit data gathering outfit, noted Thursday that there were more than 4,000 federal white-collar prosecutions last year. Under 1%, or only 31% of those defendants were business or corporate entities. This is the lowest number of criminal prosecution of business entities for white-collar offenses since federal prosecutors started tracking in 2004. I'm going to go to David in a minute, but I want to finish. I want to skip that part of the essay and try to finish the essay before I go to David. David, give me about 2 minutes here, or 1 minute here. Corporations know that at best, irrespective of their crimes, including union busting, the most need to worry about is a negotiated slap on the wrist. The average American is not afforded said leniency in the aggregate. It is on us to emancipate ourselves from our voluntary antiseptic slavery and assert our worth and collective power. Until we cut the chains in our minds from accepting corporate evil deeds as fait accompli, there will be no change. It is up to us to vote our interests and elect those who will bring a fair economy to all of us. Come on in, David. How are you doing today?
Well,
I'm here, David.
yeah, I was. Are you aware of? There's a list that says the 14 signs of fascism. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard. I don't remember if it's the 14 signs of fascism, but I've heard of something amount of fascism before.
Okay, one of the 14 signs of fascism on that list is corporate power is protected.
Oh, got it. Yeah, I do know that. Yes.
Now, one thing I really wanted to comment on was this guy that called you about the fellow who's an ex-police officer.
Yes.
And I don't know, from what I could tell, it sounded like he was trying to make apologies, were some of the guys that were involved with Chauvin, who was
What he was trying to
Chauvin
do
was-
is to say that these guys were following their leader, and
Well,
very few
here's
people go
okay.
against their leaders. Yeah.
Let me comment about what I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the people that were in the Nuremberg trials after World War II. They basically maintained the same thing with Hitler. They said we were only doing our jobs.
Right.
That did not absolve them of their guilt.
No, it shouldn't.
Number one.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about it. They are adults. They're not children. And furthermore, nobody forced them to become police officers. And here's the problem. When you sign up for a job like that, you're under the understanding that you're receiving from the state an enormous amount of power over the people that
Right.
you're sworn to protect and
David,
serve.
you're absolutely right, and I'm running out of time. I hope you
know.
heard when I told him that he has he's a professional, and as a professional, what we expect of him. I am happy that Mr. Caston called in. I'm very happy because
he's held to a higher standard.
exactly, and we have to have these kinds of dialogues. However, for others in the community to hear. Because what we have is these shouting matches, and the way the mainstream media handles these stories, they don't allow expressions, right? And that's what we have to do here. And that's how we actually get across and get towards people. But David, as usual, thank you so kindly for calling in, my brother. You keep listening, keep calling. We'll stay together, okay, sir?
I'll do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gabriel.
All right, folks. Look, I hope you enjoyed the program. Please go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter to read the entire newsletter. And please remember to go to kpft.org to make sure that we can stay online by providing whatever support you can. It's going to be a few seconds for me to get out of here. So my name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this, baby. I am what?